I remember the day my nephew, Jude, came to stay with us. I was excited because I loved spending time with him. He was funny and always made me laugh. But as the days went by, I started to notice something strange. Jude looked at me differently, and I could feel a tension in the air. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Jude was just a teenager, and I was a young lady, but his glances lingered longer than usual. Sometimes, he would brush against me, making my heart race, and I didn't know what to think. One afternoon, while we were home alone, Jude put down his controller and turned to me. "Can I ask you something?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, feeling my heart race. There was an intensity in his gaze that made me both nervous and intrigued. "Do you think we could be more than just uncle and niece?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I was taken aback. I had sensed a connection, but I never expected him to say it out loud. My mind raced with confusion and excitement. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, trying to grasp the situation. He leaned closer, the distance between us shrinking. His eyes sparkled with a kind of sincerity that made my heart race. "I just feel something special between us. When nobody is around, I think about you a lot," he admitted, his voice soft and serious. A mix of emotions washed over me like waves crashing on the shore. I felt flattered and happy that he felt this way, but at the same time, I remembered we were family. "Jude, we can't think like that," I replied gently, trying to keep things clear between us. I wanted to make sure he understood, but my voice trembled a little, revealing the confusion I felt inside. Jude looked at me with those intense eyes, and I could see a flicker of disappointment. "But why not?" he asked, leaning even closer. "It doesn't feel wrong when we're together. It feels right." I swallowed hard, feeling a flutter in my stomach. My mind raced with thoughts about what we were doing and where this could lead. "Jude, we can't think like that," I repeated softly, hoping to set boundaries. But as the days went by, I couldn't shake the feeling. Our conversations became deeper, more personal. We shared secrets and dreams, and I found myself drawn to him in ways I never imagined. It was thrilling and scary at the same time. I struggled with my feelings, knowing we were crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed. Stick with me on this story. And please, if you are watching this story and haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe to my channel. And if you are a returning subscriber, I love and cherish you. Now, let's go back to our story. One evening, while we were watching a movie together, he took my hand. My heart raced as he intertwined his fingers with mine. I felt a warm rush of emotions, but I also felt a pang of fear. "Jude, we shouldn't do this," I whispered, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. He looked into my eyes, his expression serious. "I can't help how I feel," he said softly. "I've wanted to kiss you for so long." His confession sent shock waves through me. I was torn. Part of me was flattered, while another part knew we were crossing boundaries. The next day, I tried to act normal, but every interaction felt charged with unspoken words. I could see the desire in his eyes, and it made me question everything. Could I allow myself to feel this way about my nephew? One afternoon, he reached out and brushed my hair behind my ear. His touch was electric, sending shivers down my spine. "I've thought about this moment a lot," he said, looking deeply into my eyes. I was overwhelmed with emotions, battling between desire and reason. "Jude, please," I said, my voice shaky. "We need to set some boundaries." But deep down, I felt the weight of my own longing. I could see he was struggling with his feelings, too. The tension between us grew stronger with each passing day. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't help but feel drawn to him. It was as if an invisible force was pulling us closer. I felt guilty for wanting him, yet the thrill of it was intoxicating. I wondered how far we could push these feelings before it all became too complicated. One evening, we found ourselves alone again, the atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. Jude looked at me with a mix of longing and uncertainty. "What if we just kissed?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. My heart raced at the suggestion. It felt so wrong, yet so right. I hesitated, battling with my conscience. "Jude, we shouldn't," I said, my voice trembling. But as I looked into his eyes, I felt a part of me wanting him. In that moment, all the rules we had set seemed to fade away. Before I could respond, he leaned in closer, and our lips met in a soft, tentative kiss. My heart soared, and I felt a rush of emotions I couldn't control. It was a moment of passion and confusion, a mix of excitement and fear. But just as quickly, reality crashed back in. "What are we doing?" I pulled away, my breath quickening. I felt guilty and scared but also exhilarated by what had just happened. "We need to think about this," I said, my voice shaky. I could see the hurt in his eyes, and it made my heart ache. "I know it's complicated," he said softly, his gaze fixed on me, "but I can't stop thinking about you. I don't want to hide how I feel." His honesty was both refreshing and terrifying. I could see the passion burning in him, and I couldn't deny that I felt it too. For weeks, we danced around our feelings, trying to navigate the complexities of our relationship. There were moments of closeness and times when we pulled away, unsure of what to do next. I felt trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, and it was exhausting. As time passed, I realized that I couldn't ignore my feelings anymore. The connection between us was too strong to deny. I wanted to explore it, but I also knew the risks. What would our families think? What would happen if things went wrong? One day, as we sat together on the porch, I took a deep breath and looked at him. "Jude, I can't pretend anymore. I like you, but we need to be careful." I could see the hope in his eyes, and it made my heart flutter. "I want to explore this, but we have to be responsible." He nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "I promise to be careful. I don't want to lose you." In that moment, a wave of relief washed over me. It was scary to take this step, but it also felt right. As the summer went on, our relationship deepened. We spent more time together, learning about each other's lives and dreams. There were moments of laughter, tenderness, and even moments of doubt, but through it all, we remained committed to exploring our feelings. There were challenges, of course. We had to navigate our family's expectations and the judgment that might come from others. But with each passing day, I felt more confident in our connection. Jude became my confidant, my partner in crime, and my closest friend. Yet, I still worried about the consequences. What if we got caught? What if this relationship changed everything? These thoughts haunted me, but I couldn't deny the happiness I felt when I was with him. One evening, as the sun set, I turned to Jude. "I'm scared about what this means for us," I admitted, "but I'm also excited." He took my hand and squeezed it gently, his eyes filled with understanding. "We'll figure it out together," he said, his voice steady. "As long as we're honest and open, we can make this work." His confidence reassured me, and I knew I had made the right choice by letting myself feel. As we embraced, I realized that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with him. Our bond had grown deeper than I could have imagined, and I was ready to explore it fully, together. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. We shared secret glances and whispered conversations, our connection growing stronger with each passing moment. Every time we were alone, the air was charged with tension, and I could feel the butterflies in my stomach. We would often find excuses to be together, stealing moments when we thought no one was watching. One afternoon, while we were in the kitchen preparing lunch, Jude stood close behind me. His presence sent shivers down my spine. "You know, I can't stop thinking about you," he said softly, leaning in just enough for me to feel his breath on my neck. I turned to face him, my heart racing. "I think about you too," I confessed, feeling a rush of vulnerability. His eyes lit up, and he smiled a genuine smile that made my heart melt. We both knew the boundaries we were crossing, yet it felt impossible to hold back. "Can I kiss you again?" he asked, his voice low and full of hope. I nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. Our lips met again, this time with more urgency. The kiss deepened, and I lost myself in the moment, forgetting everything else. The world outside faded away, and it felt like it was just the two of us, wrapped in our own bubble of emotions. After that day, our kisses became a regular part of our interactions. Each time, it felt both exhilarating and frightening. I often worried about what would happen if anyone found out, but in those moments, all that mattered was Jude and me. One night, as we lay in the dark talking about our dreams, I felt a sense of peace. "What do you want to do after the summer?" I asked. He paused for a moment, then said, "I want to be close to you, no matter where we are." His words made my heart swell with emotion. "I feel the same way," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The thought of him being away after the summer made me anxious, but we both knew we had to figure out how to maintain our connection. As the days turned into weeks, we spent more time together, learning about each other's lives, families, and aspirations. I discovered that Jude was not just a teenager, he was thoughtful and had dreams. He shared his stories with me, and I found myself captivated by his imagination. One day, he asked if I would read one of his stories. "It's about a girl who falls in love with someone she shouldn't," he said, his eyes searching mine for approval. I could tell he was nervous, but I smiled encouragingly. "I'd love to," I replied. As I read, I couldn't help but feel that the story mirrored our own situation. It was about a love that was forbidden yet so powerful that it couldn't be ignored. I felt a mixture of admiration for his talent and concern for the path we were on. After I finished reading, I looked up at him. "You have a real gift," I said sincerely. "This story is beautiful." He grinned, his eyes shining with happiness. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." But as I praised him, a thought nagged at the back of my mind. What if our relationship became like the characters in his story? What if it ended in heartbreak? The fear of losing him lingered, but I pushed it aside, wanting to focus on the present. As summer approached its end, we decided to take a weekend trip to the beach. It was a chance for us to escape reality and just be together. The beach was beautiful, with golden sands and clear blue waters. We spent the day laughing, playing in the waves, and enjoying each other's company. As the sun began to set, we found a quiet spot away from the crowd. Sitting side by side, we watched the horizon, feeling the warmth of the sun on our skin. "This is perfect," Jude said, glancing at me. I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest. "It really is." Without thinking, I leaned my head on his shoulder. It felt so natural, so right. He wrapped his arm around me, pulling me closer. The moment felt magical, as if time stood still. Suddenly, Jude turned to me with a serious expression. "Can we promise to always be honest with each other, no matter what?" he asked, looking deeply into my eyes. I felt a sense of gravity in his words. "Yes, I promise," I replied, feeling a surge of determination. As we made that promise, I knew we were stepping into unknown territory. I had no idea what the future held, but I was willing to take the risk. Our relationship was unconventional, but it was also beautiful, and I wanted to explore it fully. That night, as we lay under the stars, we talked about our hopes and dreams. Jude shared his desire to travel and write, while I opened up about my own aspirations. We talked for hours, feeling more connected than ever. When it was time to sleep, we cuddled close, wrapped in each other's warmth. I felt safe in his arms, and for the first time, I didn't worry about what others would think. In that moment, it was just us, and that was all that mattered. As summer came to an end, we faced the reality of returning to our everyday lives. Jude would be going back home, and I couldn't shake the anxiety that settled in my chest. I didn't want to lose what we'd built together. We promised to stay in touch, and as we hugged goodbye, I felt a mix of sadness and hope. "I'll always be here for you," I whispered in his ear, holding on tightly. He pulled back, looking into my eyes. "And I'll always be here for you," he replied, his voice steady. The weeks that followed were filled with texts and calls. We shared our lives, and despite the distance, our connection remained strong. But as days turned into months, the longing for him grew harder to bear. I missed the warmth of his embrace and the sound of his laughter. One evening, as I sat alone in my room reflecting on our time together, I felt a surge of determination. I couldn't let our bond fade away, so I made a decision: would visit him. After a few weeks of planning, I found myself on a bus heading to his town, my heart racing with excitement and nerves. What would I say? How would he react? Deep down, I knew I had to see him. When I finally arrived, my heart pounded as I walked up to his house. I knocked, and moments later, Jude opened the door, his face lighting up with surprise and joy. "You're here," he exclaimed, pulling me into a warm embrace. "I missed you," I murmured against his shoulder. He stepped back, looking at me with a mix of happiness and disbelief. "I can't believe you actually came." We spent the weekend catching up and reminiscing about our time together. It felt like no time had passed. Each moment was filled with laughter and tenderness, reigniting the spark between us. On the last night of my visit, we found ourselves sitting under the stars, just like we had that summer. Memories flooded back, and a sense of nostalgia washed over me. "Promise me we won't lose this," I said, looking into his eyes. "No matter where life takes us." He nodded, his expression serious. "I promise. I want this just as much as you do." With that, we leaned in for another kiss, the world around us fading away once more. In that moment, I knew we had something special, something worth fighting for. No matter the challenges, I was determined to keep our connection alive. As I returned home, my heart was full of hope. I knew our journey together was just beginning, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. With Jude by my side, I felt like I could conquer anything. But as time passed, life began to pull us in different directions. We grew older, with new responsibilities, new people, and new paths. Jude and I stayed close, but the intensity of our connection softened into something more distant. We still cared for each other deeply, but the feelings that had once sparked between us began to shift. Eventually, Jude met someone else, someone kind and smart who made him happy in a way that I knew I couldn't. At first, I felt a pang of jealousy, but as I watched him grow in his relationship with her, I realized that this was part of life. We both needed to find our own way, even if it meant not being together as we once imagined. I, too, found someone. He was gentle and supportive, and in him, I found the love I'd been searching for. Though it wasn't the same as what I once felt for Jude, it was real and solid. Our love grew naturally, and before long, we were planning a future together. Jude and I eventually drifted apart as we built our own lives. We still saw each other at family gatherings and exchanged a smile or a nod, but the connection we once shared had settled into a quiet, mutual understanding. We both knew that our time together, while important, was just a chapter in our lives. As the years went by, we each found the people we were meant to be with, and in the end, that was enough. I often looked back on my days with Jude and smiled, knowing that what we had was special, but also knowing we made the right choice. Our story didn't end the way we once thought it would, but it ended the way it was supposed to. Life had taken us on different journeys, and though we didn't end up together, we both found happiness in the paths we chose. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you learned a lesson. Please, if you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love for you to join me on this journey. Click the subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you'll be the first to see new interesting stories like this one. I truly appreciate your support. And if you're still here listening, it means you watched the story to the very end, and you're the real motivation behind my work. Thank you so much, I don't take your support for granted. See you in my next video. Bye bye.